So, welcome everybody again to the Highland meeting. We'll almost done the door prizes. This meeting is for discussing politics and current events, and we meet during the school year on the first Friday. So,
did not get an email about tonight's meeting. This list and all I do.
oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so I am the director of the group called Your Health Freedom, and we are an advocate, and we educate legislators and public policymakers and the general public on issues having to do with health freedom. So we have a symposium coming up on September 18th and 19th. And if you would like more information about that, there are flyers sitting on the table here and on the table in the back. And you can buy tickets at www.yourhealthfreedom.org. And we would love to have you come. We've got tons of great speakers, and we'll be covering a lot of subjects that will help you to get through the next several months. So we'd love to have you come to that. Co-hosting the meetings is Will Nelson, and he is a talk show host on K-Talk Media, and you can hear him every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 o'clock on the path to state sovereignty. It's his mission is to restore the sovereignty of the states for that of people and to stop the tyranny of the general government. So, just talk to Will. That's what these guys are working on too. They've been working really, really hard. Okay, so we're broadcasting tonight live on Facebook and also on YouTube and we've already had a prayer. Thank you all for being here. And mostly, thank you for being concerned citizens and advocates for liberty, because that's what we need right now. This is our time. If we don't stand up now, it's going to be too late. So this evening here tonight is one step, one piece in the puzzle to helping people to separate themselves from government tyranny. And homeschooling is the first and best step to doing that, because the next generation gets the right education instead of being indoctrinated by whatever the schools want to teach them. So if you are afraid of homeschooling, now is the time to start listening and learning. It's not scary. So we'll help you to understand that and answer any questions that you have in a few minutes. 2 weeks from today is the symposium. I told you to get where you can get tickets for that. Our next meetings in October, Lori Updike will teach Christ's story, history, or his story, in a way you've never heard it before, unless you attended American Heritage School. In November, Highland, who is currently a teacher at American Heritage School, will present a foundational aspect of the U.S. Constitution. And then in December, Joel Skousen will present his annual and ever popular World Affairs Brief. If you're not on the email list, we'll send the sheet around. If you are watching the live streams and you want to be on the email list, contact me and I'll help you to get on the email list. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with homeschooling. I have a blog that I put together. Allison was there when I was just birthing the idea of doing a blog, and I didn't really know why I was doing the blog. I just felt like I really, really needed to do it. And I think now, looking back, that it was because everything was still fresh in my mind, and I was able to record a lot of things that I had done, mistakes that I had made, and things that other people could benefit from. So I really think it was a blessing. I think it was something from God, and I would encourage you, if you need more information on homeschooling, it's called homeschoolwise.com, W-I-S-E, homeschoolwise.com. And there's all kinds of stuff. The first article on there is just a general overview, but there's on mentoring teens, and there's how to do record keeping and how to write essays, and how to cook sourdough bread, how to make sourdough starter. All of the things that I can remember that I did in homeschooling, I have put there. And there is no advertising. I don't get any money from this, and I don't want to get any money from this. It's a labor of love. So, just an overview of how I see homeschooling. It's not public schooling. Can you all hear me okay? I wonder if I should I be using the mic for these guys? Maybe I should have just heard the watching the live stream. Is that better?
I think so.
Okay. So homeschooling is not public schooling at home. You need to get comfortable. Don't plan on sitting at desks all day long or wearing masks all day long. I didn't write that on here, but that's right now I would. And go with the flow of family life, set priorities, but be willing to work around whatever your priorities are, because there are going to be illnesses, there are going to be births, and there are going to be other family events, and you need to be prepared to let those things happen and have them be part of your homeschool experience. Don't buy everything you see, and I'm speaking from experience here. Use the library, find free stuff online, and on my website I have a link to free stuff online. And enjoy being home and spend time together. Don't stress out. Tara told me years ago, she doesn't know what she told me. She said the worst day of homeschooling is better than the best day of public schooling. And I agree with that. Even if all you do is hang out with your children for the day, maybe read some stories, go on a field trip, whatever, don't stress. They learn everywhere they are. And the more you get them out and seeing things and touching things and tasting things, the more they're going to learn and the more they're going to love learning. So don't stress, don't buy everything you see. If you're transitioning from public school, allow everyone to get used to being home, find the joy in being together, and then work on academics. Don't rush straight into academics. When you're ready to begin with the basics: reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. I consider history one of the basics because it's so critical to our worldview and to how we behave in the world. So history is a basic. Don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed with the materials. Keep things simple. Allow your children to follow their interests and feed the flame. There was one segment of our homeschooling history where my oldest child, my son, was fascinated with Roman history. And we spent a whole semester on Roman history. We painted things, we made armor, we did just everything we could think of. We made food. And my philosophy is that you see and you taste and you touch and you hear. So find all of those elements and try to make all of those phonogram cards, McGuffey readers, and short, consistent lessons in beginning math. Again, and then you can find specific tips on mentoring teens if you look at this opening article also. And then there's a whole list of possible curriculum choices there that you can click on all of those links and go explore everything without buying all of it and filling up your house with stuff that you end up not using. So that's an overview of how I see homeschooling, and I know that there are as many ways of homeschooling as there are homeschools. So that's why I wanted to have the perspective from all of these moms. So what we're going to do now is you guys feel free, they're going to introduce themselves, and then you guys feel free to start asking them questions. So we're going to start with Tara. Can you We are technologically challenged in this building.
I have 5 children. 2 of them went through the public school system, but because of difficulties they had, one molested in school. So there we go. So she graduated early because she had enough of public school. So she was out. The second one was hyperactive a little bit, ended up after 10th grade going, I cannot do this one more year. 80 class periods are not going to work for me. So she ended up being the first one to graduate with the concurrent enrollment. How many of you have heard of the concurrent enrollment program and the distance learning program? that Alpine School District has. I don't know how many school districts have it. I am familiar with Alpine School District because that's where my kids were. So my daughter was the first one to graduate from Lone Peak from that concurrent enrollment when it was just starting. Actually, it was distance learning because they were actually in the physical. They were in high school, but attending a college class. They piped it in at that point. My youngest three decided that they did not want to go to public school anymore, so they begged to homeschool. And I said, not on your life, I'm not giving up 6 hours of time every day to get my stuff done. So they begged hard enough that I said, you go ahead and the whole summer, you have to get along the entire summer and you have to do all your chores. I lost the bet. It's like, how do you do that with your kids, right? And they did. And they, you know, we have our ups and our downs with that. We did great. My daughter, I have 2 sons and a daughter in those youngest 3. My daughter still has no high school diploma. She does, however, have a PhD in biochemistry from Duke University. So that's, you know, I was really worried. I listened to moms like Kristen and other moms that I knew who were very, you know, this was their plan from the beginning. And one of my kids went face. That was awesome. It was so fun. I had a kid that went through his Dungeons and Dragons phase, and I thought, oh, this is not going to be good. And he ended up getting a 29 on the ACT on his first try. That study. So I figured goals out and find what they're doing. We also have a little farm, which kind of started because of some of our kids that wanted to have livestock, and so now I'm the one that does all the milking and the cow and the chickens and ducks and all that. But as remember, Kristen was saying, take your little kids on field trips. I host quite a few little field trips to my farm, no charge, just like Kristen does her blog. I have a blog, and I have kids, small groups that come and you want to see how what it's like to be on a farm, on a little real life, not Thanksgiving point, you better wear clothes and shoes kind of a farm. But the #1 rule on farm is be nice or be tasty, so you will find friendly animals there when you come. So that's kind of the things like Kristen was giving you some advice for homeschool, my especially from coming from somebody who kind of got suckered into it, is always be curious. You're going to be frustrated. It's okay. That's normal. Can't fix normal. And be all in. Like I was like, okay, well, I guess we're all in. We're going to do this, and you will find the resources that you need that will help your family and your children learn. You are not going to ruin your children. It is impossible to ruin your children. I promise, it's really impossible to ruin them. So, but yeah, be prepared to be frustrated. Be prepared to go, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And just be all in. And be willing to help the kids and love them.
I wrote mine down because I thought it'd be quicker if I could just read it. My name is Allison Moore Smith, and I graduated from BYU in 1987 for our first child. My husband's Sam. And I have been married for 35 years. I have 6 kids, 4 girls, and then 2 boys. I did not intend to homeschool. I was coerced by my older. We lived in Florida. She was 7, and she was going to be bused to the gifted program. And she coerced me and debated me, a 7-year-old, into doing it. I told her she'd be a freak and it would have no friends. And that we'd do it for 1 year to prove just how terrible it was. All 6 of my kids will graduate from our homeschool. All of our children to date have attended BYU Provo. Our oldest has a bachelor's and a master's degree. Okay, get this. BS in film editing with minors in computer science, graphic design, and ballroom dance. Wow. And an MS in information technology. Our second and third have bachelor's degrees, one in landscape management and the other in music dance theater. We have a variety of intros. Our fourth began studying music dance theater at BYU on a talent scholarship and then quit after a 1.5 years. She's a full-time film actress. Our fifth is serving a full-time mission for the Eldest Church in the Utah Pleasant Grove Service Mission, which PS is not just for people with disabilities or problems. I think it's the perfect model for missions, and it always makes it completely personalizable. It's amazing. We just started our 27th and final year of homeschooling our youngest son. He is 16 and will graduate a year early in spring of 2021. And as an aside, he hosts a film club every Wednesday from 2 to 4 at our home in Linden for high school age guys and gals. If anyone's interested, come talk to me after because it's great fun. I just became a grandma to the most gorgeous boy in the world in May. I'm a YouTuber and a blogger at Midlife Credo. This week, if you know me, these people who know me, you know this. I published my book this week.
Wow.
This week, if I just uploaded the EPUB today, so I'm 24 hours ago. My main message today is that you've been brainwashed. Education does not have to be difficult nor expensive. It is awesome.
Well, my name is Rebecca, and I came to homeschooling because for most of my elementary school age, and my experience before that was that in my first grade year, the school district decided to roll in the whole word method of phonics, and my mom spent the entire year fighting with the school district, like, why can't I teach her at home the phonics method that works? And then she transferred it, and that's what I was going to do with my kids. And we really enjoy homeschooling. I don't have I mean, these ladies have already graduated some kids, so we're just really old. My oldest is 13. I have 4 students right now. But I think homeschooling should not be so stressful. It should be something that's relaxed and comes out of your own personality, your own family flavor. And I really totally agree with you. It doesn't have to be expensive or stressful. I just hope that anybody who's asking questions here today, when they walk by, they feel like refreshed and excited about what they can go out and do, and just ready to kind of go home and take the problems they have and really look at them individually and just brainwash. Not brainwash. Yes, brainwash. Brainstorm. Just look at those individual problems and brainstorm until you have a solution that works for your household. I think that's really the main thing you need, just to be a homeschooler. Just be willing to brainstorm.
My name is Katrina Kennedy, and I have 8 children. I've been homeschooling for 19 years. My oldest is 27, and my youngest is 13. So I started homeschooling my kids after my oldest went through 2nd grade and my second went through kindergarten. And I noticed when they were at school, they would spend the first 2 weeks of the school year fighting. And then when they would have a break, they'd spend the first 2 weeks of the break just fighting. And I realized that they were so stressed out in that environment that it was damaging their relationship. And when I started to homeschool, we were in transition. My husband had just finished medical school and residency and decided to go to law school. And we were renting. We didn't know how that was going to turn out. So I thought, if I'm ever going to homeschool, which is something I thought about for about 10 years, ever since I knew it was an option or an idea, I thought, if I'm ever going to homeschool, this is the time. So that's when I started homeschooling my children. And if I were to go back and raise my children again, the number one thing I would do is completely pull them out of the public school system, the sooner the better. And it was a big and scary thing to do, for sure. My husband, being very well educated on a university level, was not as convinced as I was that this was going to be a good plan. And it took me probably 12 years of homeschooling my kids before I realized that this was God's work. This is what He wanted me to do. And when you are doing God's work, you cannot fail. So when I'm looking at how to accomplish this great work, I personally try and live a certain way that I can have a relationship with my Father in heaven and recognize what the divine potential of His children He sent to me is, and be an instrument in His hands in helping them achieve their potential. So I have a lot more to say on that. So if you have questions, I'm happy to address those.
My name is Laura Evertine, and my oldest, I have 5 girls. My oldest was born 1 week prior to my 3rd week of law school, or 3rd year of law school. And 3 years later, we started homeschooling, essentially. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but my philosophy of homeschool is, and I tell this to all my friends who have their children in all different kinds of schools or all different iterations, is basically I, as the mom or the dad, the parents, are choosing what to teach specifically and choosing what we outsource. We have done a variation of classroom charter. We have graduated homeschool. I've gone to BYU. One has graduated and is now in PA school. It's just started her rotation, actually. And so I have 2 at home, again, doing combinations of various things. One is taking 1 class at the local high school. That's her choice to do that. And we've outsourced many things, but I think, to me, the fundamental principle is that we choose. We as parents choose and don't just assume and pass off and assume that they're going to get what they need elsewhere. The most that has helped us is the idea that learning everything really isn't workable. Our goal has fundamentally been to teach our children how to learn. If you think about as adults, when there's something we don't know, there are ways we can learn. And it doesn't require, sometimes you might take a seminar, you might take a class, you might sign up for an online class, but most of the time you go out and you find the information and you learn what you need to do. And of course, in this electronic and digital age, there are so many resources that way as well. So I think what I feel like has been very successful for us is teaching our children how to learn and helping them love that learning process. And it doesn't come automatically. All of my children's learning styles have been more similar to mine, and so that has worked out well. And that actually made it easy, but that isn't always the time. It is really, really key. I'm awful at crafts. I'm awful at those kinds of things. I found people to outsource that too sometimes. And sometimes my children really just like sitting on the couch and reading with me more than anything else. One of the measures of success that I feel like we've had, because you wonder, right? You wonder from the very beginning, and then you wonder even along the way. You feel like, well, things are going well, but you wonder. And then one gets into college, and you still kind of think, well, is it going to work out for the rest of me? That's just life. There's ups and downs, and you wonder of lots of things. But one of the successes that I feel like for me was when my daughter said, "Mom, I want to live close to you, and you can help me homeschool my kids."
That's nice. So now we'll have questions. Go ahead and raise your hand.
The first question came by one of our viewers asking.
Welcome Home Farm. Remember the daughters of one of her ducks? Yes, I do. So it's Welcome Home Farm. The blog is Welcome Home Farm DJ. I do not have a Facebook presence. It is no scroll September for me, so you probably won't even find me on Facebook at all. But you can ask Kristen. Kristen will give you the contact info if you want to come and visit. I had somebody 2 weeks ago, two families that came with their little kids. So.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna get the mic over to whoever else wants to talk. There's welcome home.
Welcome home farm.
Farm.
Right here in Highland. Right here in Highland. If you are driving from American Fort Canyon or from Macy's now, and you're going east, if you look north and you see
the barns that has the solar panels on it, that's how close we are to Highland. And it's kind of odd because my husband has a PhD in organic chemistry. Pretty good combination. We have all ends of the spectrum.
Those are trees.
As long as they're not roosters.
Favorite math for high schoolers?
So when someone asks a question, will you restate it so that it can be heard up here?
I'll make one so I can remember what it is.
Say the question again.
The question is favorite math curriculum for high schoolers. What we use is algebra and geometry, Harold Jacobs, and algebra 2 trig and calculus from Forrester to Camp University.
For high school, I like Math UC.
Math what?
Math
Math
UC, it's
UC.
MATHUSEE. Math.
So for high school, that is one of the things we outsource. I actually have a minor in math. But with my oldest daughter, she determined that she did not want to learn math. And we were lucky enough to have a very good resource in a local public school. So she actually did take math. That was prior to the Common Core alignment. And so, I don't know how things shake out now. However, I will say just in general with math curriculum, I think I own probably 10 or 12, including with Harold Jacobs. We've done iterations of different things over the years. I'm going to address a different question because I'm sure there are people interested as well. For elementary and early years, we really liked Singapore, and now Beast Academy came out, I don't know how many years ago, but we really like that. It's put out by Art Problem Solving. They prepare people for older children for math competitions. And I think it has a lot of good approaches. And the idea there is that it's a little more challenging, but it's a great program. I highly recommend that. But we have never stuck with just one program throughout the whole year. We do a combination. My daughter still works through the rest of the Singapore, and then we also do bits of Math UC. This is my youngest daughter currently, who's 10, and then also the Beast Academy. We're just about finished with that set of elementary level. But I think you find one of the things about SACs, and I know that's common, there are different approaches. That's a spiral approach, and for some children, that may be what they want, and maybe what works for them. We found that it made math really unhappy and really boring. It's a solid program, and there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of repetition. You could even skip it every other year and still be okay. I think even just in general, if you want to listen to that program. But Singapore is, again, one that I highly recommend for elementary, and Beast Academy.
Which one could you skip every other year?
It spends the first half typically in the elementary years. It spends the first half reviewing here before, and then the next half moving on. But then you get that same review from the following year.
How do you spell that last one?
SAXON.
And I would add to that too, with my different children, that I've started out some years with the curriculum feeling like that was going to be a good fit for that child. And after a few months of enough complaining, I realized maybe I needed to find something else. So sometimes a program will work for one of my children, but not for the next. And I never had a child that liked Saxon.
Paul Forrester, that's what I use for algebra 2 and algebra 3. I'm just going to go along with what they said. Everyone who knows me knows I call myself like the president of the Anti-Saxon Coalition. So my dad was a math professor at BYU. So math was, my husband has a PhD in electrical engineering, so we love math. And I just can't do it. But for elementary, we used Mequon math. We also did lots of hands-on math stuff. And then we used what was called Key Tube series, which is a whole bunch of different series before we started Harold Jacobs. I love Harold Jacobs stuff. But Singapore kind of came out after I'm older. And people I know that kind of have my same math philosophy also like Singapore. So I think that, I mean, that sounds like, I've never used it, but it also sounds like something that would be good. I'm sorry, we use.
Now, we're just a little bit, we modify. Yeah, so the big thing you see up here is that different things work for different children. And guess what? It's okay. There's only one way to teach it, elementary school. So if you have to find go through 3 or 4 different programs, there are places you can buy used programs. I want to say used software, but you can buy used homes. They can run you for a while and you can kind of see if it fits with your kid before you buy it. And we did modify Saxon. We didn't just use it straight the way it came out of the book. We definitely were like, okay, you do not have to do problems 1 through 5, or that's just review. Like she's saying, spirals. So yeah, we would just say, okay, you've got this. Don't worry about that. And then for us, it was every 10th lesson you have to do everything in there because that was more like a mini quiz. So you can modify what you've got, but definitely see that different curriculums work with different children and different families, different teaching styles.
With that, so did you use the any kind of online teacher kind of situation? Not online, but it has to be sometimes.
They called homeschool this spring. That was not really homeschool, and she knew it wasn't homeschool. But she actually posts videos sometimes. Could go and look at it. She could teach a lesson online, but sometimes in defense of those teachers who were putting up 2 and 3 videos a day, they were honestly, my daughter was working from 7:30 a.m. and fielding questions all day until a lot of resources, even if you these children.
So math you see actually comes in the high school grades comes with a DVD. It's basically a teacher lecturing DVD, and then it's got lessons that go along with that, which is one of the things that I like about it. I have used tutors for math when my kids are in and I can't quite help them the way they need to be helped. Then there are plenty of people who are more capable than I am at teaching those topics. So I've used that. Yeah, so that's all I'm at. And if we don't have questions, I have other.
So I also want to put a plug in for Matthew C. for the grade, and to me that was really fundamental in math is the thing that I really like in helping me street. And you have a little block, and it's the house, it has a unit's house, and then further on down the street you have a 10th. Anyway, watch it, you can just get your hands on one of those old foundations for Matthew C. That's really helpful. I'm sure there are versions as well. Also, chalk dust algebra, and I can't remember who puts that out, and they do different levels of math. It's called chalk dust. It's a pricey one, but sometimes you can pick up used copies. Also, if you can get the, sorry, I don't know them right off the top of my head, the numbers for the ISBNs. He actually did a series of the same courses for college level algebra. And you can get the DVDs, they're just not marketed under chalk dust. If you search for it.
While you have the microphone, Laura Lynn, a listener asked, what is the math curriculum you recommended to prepare children for math competitions?
Oh, Art of Problem Solving is the company, and they have on the elementary level in recent years. She'll figure it out sometimes before I do. It's a good brain exercise, and they have hints in the back of the book. It's mathematical thinking. I think it helps problem solving and just thinking about the world in different ways. We also started early on. I don't know if you want to call it preschool, but just from the time my children were little, we started having manipulative and playing with blocks and having decimal street. You set it up, and that's what you play with blocks with, right? For your playtime, it's fun. They look at that. So I think that is really a key thing for learning in general. It's even math can be fun.
So I have one more question. My daughter decided to begin homeschooling this year, just like 2 weeks ago. Are there any, which I was ecstatic about, of course. I'm wondering, does she need to notify the school district? Does she need to seek permission from Utah State? And what are the regulations? What's the Utah code? What do people need to do here?
I can't give you the chapter verse on right now. Okay, so the legal requirement is that you file an exemption. Or you get an exemption. You notify them, and then they send you an exemption certificate. I don't know how some school districts do it now. Initially, there were school districts that put out their form that they wanted you to fill out and commit to, and that wasn't what was legally required. So Kristen, you could probably speak to this a little bit better. Yeah.
So if you want to homeschool in Utah, you just have to notify the school district that you're going to homeschool one time. That's it. It's not even annual. We've gone less restrictive on homeschool and more restrictive on vaccine exemption. But actually, it's not more restrictive. We've been restrictive for a long time. So they'll give you on their website, they'll give you a form that you could fill out, but you don't have to fill out that form. The law says that you notify the school district that you are homeschooling your children. All you have to do is notify them, get it notarized, take it in. Don't fill out their form because there's all kinds of nonsense on there about I'll teach them this many hours of this and this many hours of this. It doesn't work that way, and it's not necessary. Yeah.
The only other thing that I had to do was just withdraw it from the particular school. So we just had to notify.
Oh, so you had to go in and
just
sign a paper? Okay.
Can I
Just because I have a daughter that teaches second grade, she's taught K through high school. And if you're pulling your kids out, that, I don't know if Utah State requires that you notify the school. It is super helpful for that teacher. If you will let the school and the teacher know that child is going to be pulled out as soon as possible. Because they're planning activities, they're purchasing things. They had a whole lot of money that was deleted from their classroom budgets this year, from their school budgets this year. And if they can use those resources for another child, you might be mad at the school. I don't know if you are, but it is super helpful for that teacher to know as soon as possible.
And I think this is why a lot of people are doing both. They're doing homeschool part of the time, there's some online with the schools, so you're not working on. But you can have partial.
Yes, I know in Alpine School District you can do partial. I've done that with some of my elementary school kids from time to time. It is also tricky if you're doing Alpine K-12, that is not homeschool. Okay, you can call it homeschool, but it's really not what homeschool is all about. You can also do the electronic learning where your child is assigned their normal classroom teacher, so that in November, if you feel like they want to go back, they can be in that classroom as well. So they have one teacher. Just be aware that if you're doing that electronic classroom, I think that I should ask my daughter to make sure that's the right word. It's different than Alpine K-12. I only know this because my daughter's teaching second grade. But it's different. So my daughter actually has 2 students in her classroom that never show up to the classroom that do it online. They only have access to her for an hour and a half, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays after school from like 3:30 or 2:45 to like 4 o'clock or something like that. It's a very limited amount of time because she's required, because she has a contract with the school district to be doing other things at other times, and she has to be teaching those children. So if you have a child that's in that and you're frustrated because you don't have access to the teacher, that's why. It's because they're in there teaching 20-something other kids, and the school district has them doing other things, and their contract hours are generally 7:30 to 4:30. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but.
Go ahead.
The reason behind it, I am sick and tired of the distance learning, making program data solutions the only thing we use garbage. What are alternative ways to get through 10th grade on a mission? They have something that says they're educated to get their mission papers turned in. I need ideas.
My son is on initially he got called to Richmond, Virginia, but he's serving here now with all the stuff going on. And he doesn't have a high school diploma. So.
On the mission paper where it says you don't have education.
Oh, he does?
Yes, he does.
So give me some good, because I'm always at 10th grade, trying to work you to get the associate's degree. And they kind of have to all figure out the 10th grade. So the high school's done, but I just want to make sure that they're going to come home and be able to get it at college. But you can give them a diploma. You just give it to them and then you check that they have a diploma. That's what we've done. Or don't make a diploma.
I think they can read. My kids, I just.
Mine is about diplomas.
What they do, so you have to take it, it's
Sharina, I would add to that, graduating from seminary, 4 years of seminary is, from my understanding, if you want to go on a mission as a young man at 18 instead of 19, you have to finish seminary. Maybe if you've got an
I'm
official.
really more worried, I mean, more interested in where do we get my high school degree. High school education applies on all I'd like the fact that they have 2 years of college course. Is there any other alternatives that would be able to do that?
Well, really, as you know, you can do whatever you want to do. It's just a matter of how much you want to. From my experience, I've done concurrent enrollment. I've done distant ed. I've done. When I say I mean helped my children to do all of the above. But where I'm at now, my focus is again on helping them. And I know, Sharina, you know this, but other listeners, my focus is more on making sure they have the fundamental skills necessary academically. Yes, but first and foremost, spiritually. And as that falls into place, there's more answers that come. So to go on a mission at 18 would be, from my understanding, seminary. So that is something that we have always.
I think what I
Yes. So
another two now, we understood they have to have some kind of a, not only do they have schools, but they also require to have an associate.
yeah, so not necessary. So if you want them to go to college post-mission, what I've done with my one son who's in that position was he did not want to go to college after a mission. But what I told him was, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go to college, but you do have to apply before you go. And
apply before all the fresh.
yes, that's what we did. And my 5 who are college age have attended or are attending BYU. My oldest 2 have graduated from BYU. Those 2 did have official diplomas. One was a Lone Peak diploma, one was an Alpine School District diploma. My next 3 are attending BYU and do not have what would be considered a high school diploma. You can create your own transcript. BYU, at the time my youngest who's at BYU applied, which was last year, she was a freshman, so 2 years ago she would have been applying. the requirements were an ACT score if you're homeschooled, and you did not have anything accredited. I have had some of my children take university level classes, distant university level classes, and we've paid out of pocket for those. So it's not the same as the UVU program where it's a lot less expensive. So it is pricey, but it's been great for my children. So even my son, who was serving a mission at 18, who didn't want to go to college when he got home, by the time he left on his mission, he had 9 credits through BYU Independent Study. So that's what he's done. That's what I've done with my next 2 after him.
Laura has no comment.
So I think this may be a revolutionary concept, but a diploma of any sort, even associate's level, this is important for everybody to understand, it's not necessary. What I was encouraged to do is we looked into the colleges that my children might potentially be applying for. This was back 7th, 8th grade as we started thinking about, we're going to start heading into those 4 years that start counting. And so we looked into the various requirements of colleges that they may potentially apply to. And ultimately, my children all decided what BYU. So, and BYU, I don't know currently, I think it's, there is, if you have a minimum number of accredited credits, they will look at those, and I think it might have been like 14. But otherwise, and so they'll take that and whatever GPA you have associated with those accredited credits, and then your ACT, just as if you had a diploma. A diploma is not something that was even a relevant issue. But if they don't have that minimum number of accredited credits, then you just go straight with the ACT score. So, funny story about one of my children. We started early with one of the programs that was done through Harmony Education, so they did get credits for that because they were sent through a charter school. So by the time she was, they took a couple of classes in high school. They liked to take their AP classes and their calculus and that sort of thing. I got to know the counselor at the high school well, and he said, your daughter could graduate if she would just take this other class. She would actually have a diploma. I said, well, what's the class? And I went home and told my daughter. She said, it's not worth the seat time. And the same thing with the UVU, getting an associate's degree. It's appealing and it may serve a purpose for some children. None of my children wanted to pursue that route because you have to jump through certain hoops, you have to take certain classes, and they just simply considered those not worth the time for them and what they wanted to pursue. So it depends on the child. For some children, that may be a viable alternative or something they want to do. And I know that concurrent enrollment in this area is done through UVU. Up in Davis County, they have things I believe available like through Utah State, and there are other options.
I just don't like a 10th grade they do all the elements. They're not old enough in my mind.
In case the video didn't pick that up, the concern is that the class structures, how they've changed, aren't really the thing you want your 10th grader to be having to deal with at that age. Speaking of social issues and current events, I am going to put a quick plug in here for God's World News. It starts young. My children have done that from the very beginning. We do a subscription. Love that company. It used to be a bi-weekly magazine they would get that came. My children have always been interested in social and current issues for that reason. And it's a great opportunity on those lower levels to get them following what's going on in the world and understanding it from a perspective. I really like the perspective is that God is truly at the center of things, which is important to me and important to help my children learn in that way as well. So that I love that. I recommend it to everyone I know and all my nephews and nieces who don't homeschool yet, that as well.
Say the name again.
Yeah, it's called God's World News, GWN. And they have, an adult, that's probably the wrong word, adult magazine, but they have varying levels from elementary school age up through high school, and then one that, you as a family might subscribe. We've never done that. We've done the God's World News.
One thing to think about with regard to application is the typical high schooler who applies to college and gets accepted to college does not have a diploma yet.
it's in like January, February, or even October sometimes.
I just want to say that Laura Lynn is my sister-in-law, and I never heard that. So, she said to tell me, but I got looked at that. There you go. But I would just add to the question too about 10th grade, what do you do? I don't focus on college in 10th grade. It might be something that we do, but I try and focus more on building the individual and broadening their knowledge base and not worrying about jumping through hoops. So.
So seminary, we talked about it a little bit. How do you get them into a seminary program? What's, especially right now?
I just graduated. All my kids have graduated from seminary. The question was about seminary, how to get your kids in seminary. My kids all my 5 older kids have all graduated from seminary, and my 6th kid is in his 4th year, even though he's only 16, because you just have to talk to people. So we have done almost everything you can think of. We have done early morning, we have done seminary at the local school. Right now, my son is taking seminary at Leahona, has a seminary across the street, and they have a homeschool class. I actually have more than one now, a couple of homeschool classes. But really, just whatever is most convenient for you, just go and say, I want my kid in seminary. And I'll tell you one thing I even did. The AP schedule at the schools is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my life. It made my life miserable because 4 of my kids took classes. Another Tara quote, you probably don't remember. Years ago, she said to me, public school should be a resource, not the only source. Yes. And I have remembered that since, because my kids were young when she told me that. And my 4 oldest kids all took some classes in high school. They did all academics at home, but they took some kind of, ballroom dance and debate and welding and, whatever, and choir and whatever. And seminary, so what I would do is say, you're taking seminary, why don't you pick a class that you would like at the school to go on? And so most of them said, okay, I'll do that, but the AP schedule messed up our lives a lot, especially if they were just taking seminary. So I actually went through the whole school year, because you'll realize that sorry, this is understandable, is that a seminary teacher who does AP will do the same class twice. They'll do the same study for the A class, and then they'll do the same one for the B class. So I went through the whole year schedule, and I took it into the teacher and said, okay, here's the deal. I don't want to come in alternating weird days. I want to be able to plan over here. I want to come Monday, Wednesday, and alternate Fridays. And this is how I do it. Some days my kid will be here on A day, some days they'll be here on B day, and then alternate every other Friday. And I actually worked out the whole schedule for them. I proved to them that they were going to make every single lecture, and they let me do it with every kid I asked for. So just go in and talk to them.
Seminary, we've done a variety of things too, but American Heritage, they had an early before school class that they allowed our children to come to. So I had a couple of children that did that for a year or two. Also, then when they took classes in high school, they just put that in. I wish I had thought of doing that. And then Leahona Academy, and there are probably other options out there.
There's a home study. Well, there was at one point.
I'll just add, not on that topic specifically, but I've done the dual enrollment, doing some things at home and some things at the school, and there's pros and cons of that. But I will say that the greatest lessons for my family came with homeschooling when we weren't trying to live in 2 worlds. Not saying we don't do other activities, we do, lots of them, but I found that for my children when they were trying to function in a public school setting, and this is my children, it's not going to be everyone's children, but when they were trying to function in a public school setting, an environment where they didn't necessarily feel safe emotionally or definitely not spiritually, and then trying to be home and trying to figure out which world they wanted to fit in.
there was a great power that came to each of my children and to our family as a whole when the focus became family time and building the individual instead of trying to jump through somebody else's hoops. Which, if we don't have a question, I think a topic that might be kind of fun with these ladies over here would be socialization.
Yeah, go for it.
Because, everyone always asks, when you say you're homeschooling, they say, well, what about socialization? What do you do? I think the Tara summarized it very well. So I would actually really like to see Allison ask this question first. I'm sure she has that was a compliment.
Everything. It's always funny to me because I grew up in Forum mostly, and I was bullied extensively. I was all public school. It was socialization. I liked the schoolwork. The socialization was the worst part of school for the most part. So when people say that to me, I'm like, why? Because people need to learn to get their head stuck in a toilet or something. That's what you need to be an adult. I don't know. Because school politics and school socialization is not something that I have found carries over very well into the adult world. Sure, there are adult bullies and whatever, but you can actually choose where you go as an adult, and you can choose who to be around. And in school, you're stuck. And my bully, I call him Bob, affectionately. I had one particular bully all through elementary school and junior high, and I was constantly put in situations where I had to be with the person who was constantly harassing me, making comments about my body, and comments constantly every day. So to me, in homeschooling, you can have the kind of socialization that works best for your kids. We used to have a homeschool teen group, and we would host parties with up to 70 homeschool teenagers. I would never do that with 70. No offense, but I mean, my kids took classes at school, and we have homeschool friends, but 70 in my house, no, because the level of behavior was very different. And the level of cliquishness and all that stuff was much better. And I love having, so we've always done something. I did a choir. Both of you had kids in my choir. I had a swing choir I did for a few years. Right now we're doing a film club. I did a game club. The thing is,
we had theater. We had a big theater.
You had a theater too. My kids did not. The thing is, really, what you do is you look at your kids and you say, what does this child need? And you get with other people and you figure out. Sometimes it might be just a community thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a school group. But lots of times it is, like the film club that my son's doing. They have a great time. He has taken a full-time filmmaker course. He's worked a couple of summers ago, all summer, to buy all of his own equipment. He wants to be a videographer. And so he has people come over every week. They come over, they sit down, they talk about what they want to film, they go film it. He edits it over the weekend, he posts it on YouTube. And they just have a ball. And they make friends and they have fun. And you don't have to. Because at school, you're not supposed to. I always got in trouble for visiting with my neighbor. You're not supposed to visit, so I don't know. Do it a better way. It's more efficient.
Yeah, I was thinking I really agree with that. As parents, we should just be considering that as part of our curriculum that we're planning. You look at your kid, you see what they need, and it's not this big scary thing. It's just something that you're putting on your list of things that you need to look for opportunities for your kids or let them develop opportunities. It's just not that complicated.
It really isn't that complicated. Right now, there are so many pods popping up. That's a new term for me, but we used to call them co-ops, right? And so you think that they have to, that they're stuck at home and they're in this little thing. The biggest revelation this spring to a lot of those parents who thought they were homeschooling because they were sat home and had to do online learning was that the homeschoolers were having just as hard of a time with that as the public schoolers, because they were also not being able to go out to their co-ops or their groups or anything else. And they were stuck at home doing the same thing,
And the public schoolers were wherever they wanted to be.
Right, so you just have to see that it really is, you just open your eyes, just be curious. It is so much easier to connect with other homeschool parents right now and find the ones that have kids that are your children's age and your children's interests. It's really a lot easier than it was 25 years ago.
So when I thought it has 15, 11, and 9-year-olds are all in school, how do you homeschool? Where it is, different grades, different.
Four-year plan, anybody else here?
Oh, I know what it is, but I didn't do it.
I just can't remember.
Okay, one age is, did you say 17?
15, 11, and 9.
Okay, so I'll start out, just get the microphone here, but, and that was a topic I thought we could talk about is what does each day look like? And we can come back and cover that topic more specifically, but how do you teach the different ages is, I don't lecture, like stand up and give my kids a lecture. I set expectations for my children and follow to make sure that they accomplish them. And I make myself available to answer questions should they need help. So there, especially when I had all 8 of my children at home, there were plenty of times where they all needed help at the same time. And plenty of times where they just had to wait. But guess what? That happens in the public school system as well. So that pressure of, oh no, how do I do all this at once? I don't. Nobody does. I do the best that I can. So for me, and again, we can come back and look at this topic more specifically, but in general, each of the children has whatever level of things that they're working on, and they're working independently, and I'm available to help them. We do history together for the most part. By the time they get to be 17, it's a little more difficult, but because that is a topic that is very important to me, and it's important to understand history the way it really happened, not the way some textbook says it happened, then I focus on that. We do that all together. But even that you can compartmentalize and have different assignments for different ages. And there's a question in the back before you.
There are products on the market that don't rely much on the parents. They're very self-operated.
Some things you're not going to be able to expect your kids to just do on their own. One of the things that I have to do, it looks a lot like what was just described to you, but sometimes you have a kid who has they need more time, like say for math or something. So that's something that you plan into your day. Like that kid's gonna need an extra 30 minutes of just me. And so you just find that little time and make that for them. And normally it all works out, but yeah, family subjects as well, really helpful.
That's a question that no one can really answer for you because it varies so much with the family, and within a family it varies so much. There was a time when I had a high schooler, a junior high, 2 elementary school, a preschooler, and a newborn. And my kids are 16 years spread. And so that year was different than when I just had a kindergartner and a 3rd grader. And then it's always different. And you really just kind of sit down. I do this maybe 3 times a year. I kind of sit down and say, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to adjust, and I just kind of figure it out. But it's so individual that I don't know how to answer that other than you just have to figure out the dynamic with your family.
I don't know who the author is of 4-year plan. So there's something called a 4-year plan, and guess what? Just because the state of Utah says an 11th grader has to study, I don't know what kind of history, right? What do they have to study in 11th grade? I don't know, right? Just because they say that they have to study American history in 11th grade doesn't mean that you have to study American history in 11th grade. So like she was saying there, you do history as a group. So you just say, we're all doing American history this year. And the kindergartner is going to learn American history at his level. The elementary school is going to learn at a little bit different level. The high school is going to learn it at a little bit different level. They're going to go more in depth. Usually, or quite often, you can build your literature program around your history program. So those things work together. So
So just because the state of Utah has that, those standards, so scope and sequence, my daughter calls them standards, I have the standards every year, but it's crazy. But the state of Utah actually changes them fairly often. Like they had new ones last year and they got new ones this year. So you can actually, the thing that's more individualized is probably the math. Okay, because you're gonna have to be able to teach those concepts at different levels. But everybody can do biology at the same time. Everybody can learn chemistry at the same time, or geology, or whatever. And if you think you can't teach your kindergartner chemistry, go look it up. You can teach them. My grandkids have learned chemistry because they got a grandpa that does it. But my daughter finds stuff online as well. So you can teach that basic science and just have everybody go in depth at a different level. Science and history and literature, because the literature and history often fit together. Those are the ones that you really don't have to stress as much about because you can teach everybody the same stuff.
One of the other things about looking at a scope and sequence, like there's that series of books, What Your First Grader Needs to Know. The thing is that, well, we're using this year, but yeah, that's right. The thing you'll notice if you look at any scope and sequence, lots of school districts will publish them. And I remember looking at these back when I was starting to try to make sure I didn't miss anything. And one of the things I think for first grade and second grade and third grade in Florida at the time was to teach them modes of transportation every year. And I'm like, how many modes of transportation are there? And can I just get on a plane and go somewhere with them instead of showing them a picture of a plane and telling? So some of it's just ridiculous. And you have to stop and actually think. Don't just accept, well, the schools know, so I'm going to think about it. Do I really need to teach modes of transportation even once, let alone 4 years in a row? No, but think about it. Yeah, you have to trust yourself on that.
One more strategy that I use is if I have a couple of learners that they're in a similar grouping or they have similar skills, I just lump them into one class. And that just takes a ton of work off for me. And even though they're slightly different levels, it still works out just fine.
In my early years, I had visions of really, my children would learn absolutely everything I wish that I had learned that I didn't, and more. And that really isn't an appropriate goal for any schooling. I come back to, you teach them how to learn, how to find resources, and you help instill in them a love of learning. And then as they get older, obviously when they're younger ages, they need a lot more hand-holding. But you know what? They need a lot more cuddle time when they're younger anyway. Some of our most effective times that we have to come back to when my children are little, when I try to get them self-directed and on their little path and our scheduling, hey, you're going to spend and small children, young children, elementary age, 15 minutes. Your 15 minutes of grammar, your 20 minutes on math, and frequent breaks, and snack time is a lot of time. And recess might be kind of whatever you want, but for the young children, it's good to know expectations. We do these 3 things, and then we get a recess. But they needed a lot more hand-holding, but one of the effective things that we did, or that I would come back to and I remember, oh yeah, that's a good idea, is if we at first, in the morning, and some children need this more than others, if they really just like snuggled or had some time that filled their cup in whatever way their cup needed to be filled that morning, then they were better able to go along by themselves.
So we're going to need to wrap up here in just a couple of minutes. So if you guys want to be thinking about that while you're talking.
I was just going to add to what Laura just said, that for my older children, when they look back at our early days of homeschooling, they all look back fondly on spending the morning snuggling up and reading books. And that was very important for them to start the day that way. So Questions?
Not exactly a question, just a comment. In the recent times, it's also been, big wave of children having online resources. I have taught high school as an undergraduate for almost 10 years, and there is a definite relationship between how kids learn and how they use digital media. This is something that I've come to my own observation, and I've been hard pressed to find a single course out there to actually give this impression. So if that is something that you would be interested in, to see how that affects learning, and what can be done to foster it in terms of how you teach, that would be something that I have to offer.
Super, thank you.
So that's
fun.
a good segue. Do you guys know about pods? Does one of you know about pods?
I really don't know very much about pods.
Go ahead and finish what you were saying, and then I can say something about
We're going to
pods.
segue to that. There's another comment here too, so.
So Allison's asked for one in homeschooling that hasn't been mentioned so far is that the amount of time that it takes for the kids to learn the same material is at least half to a third. So when you're stressing and going, I need to be working 8 hours a day to teach my kids, no, 3 hours, they will get as much learning in 3 hours at home as they did in 8 hours. So you think about it, how many minutes a day do they spend walking through classes? How many minutes do they spend shooting? So, right, has something called shooting theory. It's not what they're doing in schools, right? But they're shooting up, they're in line, they're waiting for things, they're going to and fro. And by the end of the day, they spend 50% of the time doing non-learning tasks. And guess what? When they're home, it's 100% learning. And they're not learning, then they're just doing chores.
And no homework on top of that. The kids go to school all day and come home and have homework. And I would say, what did you do all day?
I can definitely verify what you're saying because my daughter teaches second grade and has taught for a long time, and she will spend on classroom management and getting in the first 2 weeks of school. If you think you have to start the first day because that's when regular school starts, they may be in their classroom the first day of school. They are learning policies and procedures because teaching anybody K through 3, maybe even up through 4th grade, they've got to learn how that teacher runs things, what they're expected to do in the classroom, and how they get from classroom to the lunchroom to when they're having gym and when they're having specialties and whatever else is going on. My daughter, on a good day, when she loves having 18 to 20 in class, that's her favorite time. She loves those class assignments because she can give each kid about 8 to 10 minutes a day in the classroom, individual time or small group time. So just think about that. And she often this year she was supposed to have 28. I think she's got 26. She knew she wasn't going to have as much individual time. So it doesn't matter your education level, you're going to be able to teach your kids because you've got more time with them, and that time's going to be better spent. And I'd like to say one more thing. When you're homeschooling, she was talking about how those kids, you're teaching them to have a love of learning. I teach guitar, and I can tell, I can ID those kids that come in that are homeschooled, even if I don't know, like the parent hasn't told me or anything, and I can tell those kids that come in from homeschool because there's an entirely different set of goals that come with a homeschooler. That homeschooler is trying to learn a principle and a skill at a different level. And the kids that are learning from public school want to pass it off and move. I just want to pass it off, which means they didn't really learn it. They just passed it off. But the homeschoolers generally want to actually learn the skill and the concept that's involved.
So a couple of things, pods are, I think that's kind of what OT could be helpful for. It's when you can't homeschool your own kids, but you can get together with a group of other parents, and then you can pay teachers to come in and homeschool. And I know there are a lot of parents who work who feel like they can't do it, but in that situation, if you find good teachers
and you can have the teachers come in and balance all of that with the work. So that's one thing. Also, I didn't tell everybody, but none of my kids have diplomas. My oldest graduated in computer science, and he's a programmer. And my second graduated with her undergraduate in neuroscience. She was at the top of her class at BYU. And then she went on to get a degree in speech pathology. So the diploma, go on the website, the homeschoolwise.com. I think I got on there how to be a transcript. So you do need a transcript to get into college usually. So UVU has BYU did not? Okay. So it depends on the school. Okay, so join me in thanking these wonderful ladies.
They're amazing women and they're all a big part of my life. And I so appreciate the lessons I learned from them. All of you. So thank you so much. Thank you.
So our next speaker is a bundle of energy and enthusiasm and hard work. And she organized a huge rally down in Provo 2 weeks ago, right? Over 2,000 people, I think, or somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 people came to the rally. Excuse me, protest. Yes, I've got to get that on that. So the protest, and it was actually a protest. It was fabulous, and we really appreciate all the effort that you went to. She's going to take just a few minutes to talk to us a little bit about what we can do to improve the situation here in Utah and what's next on her agenda. So please welcome.
Sorry I'm late. My GPS just moved me around and around.
Oh, sorry. And I couldn't answer because I was.
It's okay, I figured. So I didn't homeschool my children. I tell people all the time, you can do in 2 hours a day with your kids what they're going to get in a whole day in public school or charter school. That happens in those schools that deeply Park City. If I could go back in time, knowing what has happened in the last 6 months, and just have my house back in Orem, we won't talk about that. I will start crying because Park City is one weird place to be right now, and I feel like a fish out of water. So, what Kristen asked me to talk about is activism, and I was a Republican delegate to the county and the state in my 20s. I was extremely politically active. How many of you came to my Orem protest 2 weeks ago? Oh, awesome. I knew. Was that fire? Is it fire or what? So sorry. Well, we have another one coming up. We had probably our star speaker. We had Robert Scott Bell, who's here, my good friend on the front row. And figured it out and made content. I really wish I didn't live there, but I co-founded the first charter school in Utah, and then Mazer Prep, and I love what you guys are doing. It's a tremendous service to your children. You'll never ever be sorry that you gave this time in your life to them, and I'm really proud of you, and I deeply admire you. And I cannot believe everybody in Utah right now isn't pulling their child out of school. If they can possibly do it. And all my friends in Park City 3 weeks ago let's face it, if you're not in the position of being a stay-at-home parent, it's very difficult to, I mean, am I wrong? Like, do any of you work full-time and homeschool your kids? Wow. And you felt like you got a good education? And she wasn't just an extraordinary person. Yeah. So everybody in Park City, I thought the schools were going to collapse, and they didn't pull their kids out of school, but they are in tears on the governor. Have any of you been to the governor's mansion or his office? Thank you. Thank you. We need to through a week from tomorrow. So a week from tomorrow, we culminate the Mother's March on the Governor, which we have. The reason I did that event 2 weeks ago is so that we got a lot of energy, so that we could roll right into day and night marches on the Governor. So I did all that in my 20s. I was like a Republican delegate, and then I didn't do anything politically for 25 years. I was, like I said, raising 4 kids. I'm an adopted child and 4 children and a daughter-in-law, and running a business, and a lot of that time a single mom, and I just wasn't politically active. I was very apolitical, and I'm finding that a lot of the women who are joining me have never done anything politically, but now our children is road hasn't bothered to screaming, and I make a living by this large audience that I've been talking to for now 14 years. And if they unsubscribe or they hate me, or they don't buy my books or courses, I don't send my children to college, which I'm doing by myself. And my youngest 2 are juniors in college at SUU. It was February 27th when I started screaming, "You are being lied to. These are lies. These are across the board lies, and I can prove it." And you know what happened? Mass unsubscribe. Rotten Tomatoes sliding down me. Sharp rocks. All day, every day. I sent an email out, and all I got was hate on a blog post that I had 24 references on. And I thought it was really well written. And my team and I worked really hard on it. So that was late February. I started doing a survey in March, and I did it 10 Mondays in a row, and I asked my audience their opinion on economic shutdowns. And when I started it 10 weeks in a row, 54% of my audience, and these are people who don't vaccinate their kids, they eat Whole Foods, they do all the weird, crunchy things. These are not super mainstream people. 54% of them were pro shutting down of the economy. 10 weeks later, 8, 9, and 10 weeks later, is 6% of them who were for shutting down the economy. Well, I won't get too dark. I will not get too dark on you here, but I want to just say this one thing. I feel like the situation that we're in is like if somebody had come to me in January and said, this year is going to be like something worse than if you were diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer. And if you had told me that in January, I wouldn't have been able to think what that is. That would have sounded like a terrible, terrible thing. But how I feel about what has happened in the last 6 months as I watch my country and my state and my city being destroyed is I feel like I got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and so did all of my children and all of you. And so I was glad that Kristen asked me to come speak to you, because that's the dire situation that we're in. It is nothing less than that. And we have to stand up to it. And I have, I just was at a conservatism in Park City dinner to come here. And so I was like, Kristen, can I speak at the end instead of the beginning? And she said, yes, and thank you for that. And they said, what's going on? Like, why are you having such a hard time getting people engaged? Because you know what? I did a 450 city speaking tour all over the country. 10,000 people showed up. It didn't matter where I went. I could go to Indianapolis, I could go to Atlanta, I could go to Sacramento, and the whole place would be packed all the way to that. All I did was send it out. So she's sort of a Republican leader in Park City over the 8 conservatives in Park City. And if I'm being really honest, I was getting a little bit left leaning. I was getting really lazy. I wasn't involved politically. I was taking my own freedom for granted. I grew up in Washington, D.C. My father was if you were at the thing in Orem 2 weeks ago, I had my dad come up on, that was totally unplanned, but it was pretty great. But my dad was, he did Oliver North's job in the Pentagon. And then I, after being taught a great love for our country and being a sterling scholar in American history, then I taught American Heritage at BYU, which many of you had, American Heritage, which is a combination of political science, economics, and American history. And so I taught that over and over and over. So it's like, it's DNA deep, right? It goes back to growing up in Washington, D.C. It goes back to semester after semester after semester teaching students what the price we paid for our freedom and how we'll lose it in a generation. It's amazing we've held on to it for 244 years, really. Because I just trusted the charter schools with the curriculum I helped choose. And the conservative Utah colleges that I went to, I assumed that my children would come out of it with values similar to mine. So imagine my shock to have children who tell me they're bisexual, they're really like the new Green Deal, that they hate Donald Trump, that they hope he dies, that, I mean, I can carry on, but I just thought it was a little phase, but now it feels like I have to turn this around. And all that stuff I said, I think I've turned that around. But there's a lot we need to turn around. And I believe that people like me are going to be deplatformed before the vaccine comes out, because I've been speaking up too loudly. Lots of weird stuff is happening to me on Facebook. I've been deplatformed like many of my colleagues, but before this started, 200,000 content creators have been deplatformed on Facebook. And I have a platform on Facebook that sometimes I'll get over 100,000 views on a video. So, and my staff is begging me, please don't cost us our jobs by getting deplatformed. We make a living on Facebook. And I say, well, I'm trying to walk the line here, but I will not speak up about these issues. I hope that you guys get, one of my followers told me this week, and I'm super inspired by it, that he has some, whatever content he thinks is really important about vaccines. Like right now, my favorite content is the Alan Dershowitz, Bobby Kennedy debate, which wasn't even a debate. It was Bobby Kennedy very politely schools Alan Dershowitz. Whatever you have to do, like get in on those jump drives and walk up to pregnant women. That's what this guy told me. He's like, I go up to pregnant women, I start a conversation, I say, will you please just watch this? If I were a first-time pregnant mother, I would absolutely take that from a stranger and go listen to it. What if it saves that child's life? What if that child ends up not autistic because of something you did like that? I mean, do you see how important activism is right now? I waited too long. I was asleep for over 2 decades, but I'm not asleep anymore. And my early events, 200 people were showing up. Now, close to 2,000. A week from tomorrow, Saturday. So tomorrow I'm speaking. I'm going to read this that I worked on with Defending Utah, Central Utah Committee. I'm going to read this declaration, which is extremely powerful, and Kristen will give you one if she hasn't. I'm going to read this. That's going to be my talk tomorrow. And this has to be our manifesto. We have to take this, and I'm going to ask you if you have one of these. These cost me over 50 cents which isn't any big deal, except that I'm going to do thousands of them this week, and we're going to get them taped to every small business. I'm going to ask Gopi to help me, because Gopi helps me with everything. And we're going to take them to every small business. We need to take them door to door, and people need to read this because they will be empowered by this. This is us saying, we, the people, take our rogue government back, and we are done with illegal mandates. Dozens and dozens and dozens of unconstitutional illegal mandates that your governor, who has apparently sold out to the cabal, is all I can figure. To He's driving his own people off the cliff. We have to stand up to him. I have been able to. The best thing that happened in Utah County was what's that guy's name? Devin, not the Ainge, Tanner Ainge, kicking y'all out because Utah County was asleep until that happened. And I think it's because you've been in a cocoon and you didn't really see a lot of jobs getting eliminated. You didn't see what we're seeing in Park City, which is people don't go for a block without a mask on. They bully each other. The businesses shut down. All tourism was canceled. You guys haven't seen that in Park City, like I said, the 8 of us. And they said to me, can you explain what's going on with Utah? Like, why is there such a what's going on? And I said, well, do you want the answer to what's going on in Utah County? Or do you want the answer what's going on in Park City? Or what's going on in Utah State? Or what's going on in Park City? And they're like, both. I said, well, in Park City, very left-leaning. My husband got kicked out of the gym 3 times for not wearing a mask while he was alone in a gym skipping rope. Like, is it a good idea to wear a mask while you're skipping rope? So they literally just like would find him, follow him, bully him. He's a black man. They didn't care at all when we said, I could like drop dead and die if I did what you're asking me. Didn't care at all. So finally we wrote him a letter. The 3rd time they bullied him and threatened him, we wrote him a letter and said, I think you're singling me out as a black man. Guess who changed the policy the next day? Now you're allowed to work out at the Park City Rec Center. We don't even think he's being singled out as a black man. That works in Park City. Yeah. If you got kids like mine who think that Black Lives Matter is standing up for people of color, you just need to connect them to my husband because he will set them straight. What an embarrassment that is to thoughtful, educated people of color, and how it hurts them, doesn't help them. So I said, well, the problem with Park City is that half the people here don't live here most of the year, and so they just take the economy for granted, and they're just wealthy people who kind of waltz in to ski or hike or bike, and then they go back to wherever it is. And it's just cool to be liberal here. It's just really uncool to not be. But in Utah County and in Utah in general, we've got a lifetime without our government doing anything really overt that looks really horrible and ugly, like what we're seeing now. And so I think that the dominant religion here feels like the people in charge have got this. We are a very compliant culture, and it is time for that to stop. Because you and all your neighbors think that this will be, probably not you, but like the people you could have an influence on, they just think this is just going to go away soon, and it's not. This is getting worse and worse and worse as it becomes very obvious that this thing is the common cold for 399 out of 400 people who get it. It's beyond obvious now in the data that has emerged. So we have a problem with being overly compliant, and we're going to have to change how we work. And so it's going to be weird to march in the streets. We're starting next Saturday, a week from tomorrow. My site is takeactionforfreedom.com. And probably by tomorrow, it'll be all ready to go. And this thing, you can sign it, okay? You get behind this thing, it has lots of groups on it. Go sign it, but show up at the Board of Education building in Salt Lake at 2 o'clock next. Feel free to bring your children. And I can't guarantee you that there won't be the people who have been yelling horrible things at us in front of the governor to high five the police officer. That's not my turn.
Much lower violations of personal property. They were willing to give their lives and fight a war for much less.
Two things. taxes were too high.
Taxes were too high.
And there was no representation in England. What I would do.
Taxes were higher after the Constitution was instituted. It wasn't representation.
Yeah, so I'm just really here to tell you that, you know, even if you've been apolitical and you don't, you know, I've been amazed in all people, and I'm not saying this to be rude, but I've been amazed at how most of the people I talk to don't know the 3 branches of government. They're constantly like posting things on Facebook or whatever that like, Trump canceled the contact tracing bill in front of Congress or whatever, and I'm constantly having to say, Trump isn't a legislator. He doesn't have that right. He doesn't have that ability. And I think that's a lot of what we have going on in the complacent Utah culture is people are like, well, if Trump just gets elected again, he'll fix this for us. Trump cannot rein Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in. He can veto bills. And I don't know, like I'm not here to promote or I'm not here to say anything about Trump. I don't even really care. Will I vote? Yes, but that's not my, I'm not here to have an agenda about a political candidate. I'm here to say we have got to involve our children in the political process. I love seeing the people who bring their kids to the Mother's March on the Governor. You can take your kids, not too late. We're going to be protesting through next Friday, through September 11th. That's a great way to take your kids and on the anniversary of 9/11 and make your signs and stand out there in front of the governor's mansion. I really wish I'd done more of that with my kids. I really do. So now I'm having conversations with my kids and I reached out to them and said, I'm not paying another penny of your tuition at SUU until we have a long conversation about what it is that you have been taught. About, if you think you're gonna have my life that you've watched me have, where I've been able to build a business from scratch, I don't think you understand that right now my business is in free fall. I don't think you understand. The CDC just told me that I can't even collect rent from my tenants for the rest of the year if they don't want to. Did you guys know that? The CDC just canceled 45 million rent contracts. How do they have that power? Exactly. So what we are up against here is nothing less than the Marxist playbook. The reason I saw it on February 27th, I think, is because I taught, you know, BYU students what the Marxist playbook looks like and what we need to guard against. What they're doing by saying landlords can't collect rent from tenants if they don't. They say they can't pay it, they fill out a form, they can't evict them, they can't collect it, they can pay it in 10 years. That's what the CDC is saying, is they're crushing the middle class. They're crushing small businesses because that's what Marxism teaches. You have to destroy the middle class because they are the threat. If you crush the middle class and the wealth and the power of the middle class, then no one can stand up to you, and then you can just come in with your steamroller and implement communism with a pretty name like, I don't know, the New World Order. So that's really where we are right now. And I'm sorry that I can't say prettier words than that, but we need you because the media laughs at us, and every single protest I do, they lie about what we're protesting. They say it's a mass protest, even if I get up, and the first thing I say with a megaphone is, media, don't call this a mass protest. This is much, much bigger than that. Here's what we're protesting. Da, 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 da. And don't say there were dozens of people here. We just counted 400, or we just counted 1,500, or whatever it is. They lie every single time. They lie in 2 ways. They take our numbers to make us look like a bunch of, like a very small group of right-wing weirdos. And they say that we're just protesting masks because that's what they're told to do, because that's what their agenda is right now, is to divide us based on masks. I'm pro-mask, I'm anti-mask. So we're not noticing what's really going on. They're actually destroying the middle class and all the small businesses. I have had a very hard time getting people to stand up for small businesses in Utah. Masks is easy. Everybody wants to yell at each other about masks. We have bigger problems than that. I'm not for depriving people of oxygen either, but I just want you guys to point out, I just want you to think about the fact that we have even bigger issues than that. So this right here, if you want to do something, if you're like, I am willing to spend some of my time, I'm willing to spend $20, go make a copy of this and make sure 30 people get it. Make 30 copies of this or more if you're a go-getter, and take it to your neighbors. You don't have to stand there and have a conversation with them if you don't want to. Take it to the door, make sure an adult gets it and say, I really thought this was important that you read this. I think it's really exciting or something like that. Give it to them, tape it to their door. I don't care. Get this out there, put this on the door of small businesses. This is high impact. We spent a lot of time on this because it's like, what can we do that is high impact, okay? Protests, petitions, rallies. I'm so done with rallies, okay? Nothing about our event is going to be like a party. Time to protest. It's the Boston Tea Party at this point.
So are you getting media coverage for the governor as well?
You know, I'm conflicted about media. I didn't invite any to the 1,500 people who came, 1,500, 2,000 people who came 2 weeks ago in Orem. I didn't invite them just because they always lie. And I don't really see what the point is. Defending Utah thinks they're our enemy, and there's nothing good about inviting the media. Other people who I work with, the people who are working on this, what do you think? Should we have the media there?
The people that are paying attention to the media are so sweet that anything that they're told is not going to be impactful on our way. So I'm not concerned. I'm part of the new media, as you know, so we need to direct people there. And we worry less about the old media because anything we do to support them works against us because they're actively against us. So I think that our focus should be to tell people to turn off those sources and redirect them to iWire, what I do and others that are doing what you're doing. So I think it's better energy spent than propping up the media that's basically Luciferian at this point.
Yeah, I'll tell you something kind of horrible and kind of funny is that Fox News came to my last 2 protests, and they weren't invited to the one with 1,500 or 2,000 people. And the last 2 protests that they came to, when I stood up there and said, hey, media, I see you here. I see you, KSL. I see you, Deseret News. I see you, Tribune. I'm talking to you right now before we even get started. Don't tell people it's a mass protest. That's not what we're doing here. I just said that to everybody here, so don't go say that. Here's what we're really about. So at our last 2 protests, Fox News literally said to the people next to them, well, we're leaving them. They didn't do a story. So Fox, at least, they're being told by the people who tell them what the news is, the people scripting the news, they're being told, go cover the mass protest. We only want stories about mass protests. That's what we're filling people's heads with right now. And so they at least had the integrity to leave and not do a story. KSL just lies. They were there too. And they even interviewed me afterwards. And they said, and they always, whenever you do a media interview, they always say, is there anything else you want to say? And I said, yes, there is. I'd like to reiterate that you not tell people this is a mass protest because that's not what we're here to do today. They still did. They still did it. And, oh, and here's how many people were here because we counted. They'll cut it in half. They'll cut it by 2/3. So they're liars. So I don't know. I don't feel compelled to spend my time writing a press release and sending it out, but they just lie about it. So, but I agree. Like anybody with any social media platform, please help us get it out there. And you know what? Realize that your social media platform, you are being put into a little echo chamber. Like. All the people who hated what I was saying, they all left. A whole bunch of new people came, which is nice, like looks like good numbers, but there's no dialectic anymore on my pages. And so we have to get out there to people we don't know what they think. There's a lot of people in the middle that are just sleeping. Those are the people we need to wake up, is the people who are just sleeping because they're going to vote, they can come march, We need Governor Herbert and future Governor Cox that's who y'all voted for, Cox. He can't wait to shut us down again. He cannot wait to shut our small businesses down again. And to force masks and do mask mandates here in Utah County, where you guys are so freedom oriented. So anyway, I'm just here to encourage you to take this, make 30 copies, get it out there, and be a part of things. A week from Saturday, we start at 2 p.m. at the Board of Education building in Salt Lake City.
How about, it's on the 18th. How many of y'all have looked out and family, friends, neighbors, people that want to? This should be part and parcel of the discussion and that in the midst of this, because we must offer one another outside of the social media platforms where you think you might be reaching people in your town. We've got to get back to this human interaction and we have here every opportunity we can. So this weekend can be a great opportunity to do that and get everybody out this weekend.
Completely agree. And you know, if they are going to deplatform, there's several Google employees who have stated that right before the vaccine comes out, they're going to deplatform people like me and Robert Scott Bell. If that's the case, this gets very grassroots. We need you guys. Then I become just like everybody else, and instead of writing emails to 200,000 people or having a public figure platform with 210,000 people, I have to just go grassroots, and we have to have meetings, and we have to do things the hard way, the old-fashioned way. So help us do that. Don't think somebody else is going to do that. Don't think somebody else is going to do it. We need your help.
Yeah.
Oh, is there somebody watching? You should. I don't think there was. Can you leave one for me? Of course.
Thank you, Robyn.
Okay. Thank you so much, Robyn. Okay, thanks everyone for coming tonight. Just some reminders. Tomorrow is a mass protest. It's at the state capitol, and it will be starting at 6 o'clock, and we will have games for the kids, and we will have a lot of speakers there, and then we're going to collect all the masks, and there will be a burning of the masks later, but not at the state capitol. We decided that probably wasn't appropriate. So what else to post? So 6 o'clock at the state capitol tomorrow, and then Robyn's event is on, is it the 12th? It is the 12th, and that will be the march. And we really need to just be turning out at these things over and over and over again. They need to just keep seeing us. We need to be in their faces, and we need to be passing these things around. This is a really, really good summary of what has happened here, and especially for people who are not seeing what's happening. What else am I forgetting? Well, oh, the symposium. If you haven't taken one of the flyers, the half sheet flyers, we have our Your Health Freedom Symposium. It's our 5th annual symposium, and we have Andrew Wakefield coming, and we're going to watch his new movie, 1986, The Act, and have a Q&A with him, and then he'll be speaking on the Saturday morning after the movie. And we have Robert Scott Bell is speaking, and a whole long list. A lot of them are listed on here. I've added a few since then. But anyway, please at that symposium, because it will be a wealth of information that will help us kind of smooth the transition between now and what comes next. Thanks again for coming. Next time, who is it, Lowell? Lori Updike. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.